Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Only one subject tonight, and by means of introduction to her, we're going to start with this.
Dick Van Dyke Show, starring Dick Van Dyke, Rosemary, Maury Amsterdam, Larry Matthews, and Mary Tyler Moore.
Well, as you probably guessed, it's Mary Tyler Moore, who died recently at the age of 80. And let's start out by saying that if we look at the greatest female comediennes in television history, she's second only to Lucy. It would be Lucy, her, and then Carol Burnett by my accounting. In fact, let's listen to what Lucy said about her.
Lucille Ball was our landlady at that point. She owned Desilu. We'd be rehearsing on the set and very much involved, absorbed in our work, and then we'd hear a laugh that wasn't coming from the floor, and we looked up, and there she was on the catwalk, that sort of rope ladder that allows the lighting guys to hang their lights, and she'd be up there watching us, just observing us, and then she'd come down, and this happened on a couple of occasions. It was funny. And she would talk to Dick and say, "Gee, I saw the show last week, and it was really great. You are so funny." And she had something nice to say about everybody. And I will never forget one day she sort of walked out of the studio and then came back and came up to me and she said, "You're very good," and then walked on. And that was the greatest gift I ever received in this business. I don't think I have another moment that compares with the impact of those words.
Well, to get ahead of ourselves, besides that, if you listen to most of the obits, she was a female role model, the ultimate proto-feminist of the 1970s, which I think is a little oversimplistic because I think she was much a product of the trend as she was a trendsetter. But we'll get to that. As an actress, and along with her husband, Grant Tinker, whose podcast we recently did, she was indisputably one of the most important influences on the medium of television. Mary Tyler Moore was a nice English-Irish Catholic girl who grew up in, where else? Brooklyn. You don't think of her as a Brooklyn person. She lived in a Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn for a while before her family moved out to LA, and she went directly into show business out of high school. She did a great reading for Danny Thomas to be his older daughter on Make Room for Daddy, but the problem was she had a nice small nose, not exactly the Lebanese variety. So Danny said, "I like you, but I can't use you." But he kept her in mind, and after she did a short stint as the Happy Hot Point Pixie, which she did until she got pregnant — pixies aren't supposed to be pregnant — she got her first uncredited role in the film noir 1950s detective series Richard Diamond, starring David Jansen. I remember as a little boy. It's a great show.
The first regular role was that of Sam, a rather sexy voiced creature who was the answering service woman for Richard Diamond, the detective, played by David Jansen. And I was never fully seen. You would see a close-up of my mouth or a shot of my legs. They got really carried away with interesting ways to shoot this character, so she looked terribly appealing, but you couldn't really tell who she was. But there was this voice. "Hi, Mr. D. I have some messages for you." And it just piqued the curiosity of men all over the world, because they could imagine anybody they wanted. Whatever their fantasy was in a woman, they had it. It was an anonymous role for me, though, because the producers asked me to keep my identity a secret. Not that my identity meant anything at that point. I was just starting out. After we did 12 episodes, I went to the producers and said, "I really think I should have a raise," because it was getting a tremendous amount of attention. We were getting letters from everybody, and the ratings were going up. Before they even found out what I was going to ask for, which was $10 a show more, they said, "Well, no, we can easily do it very well with just about any actress, Mary, because you've never been seen." So I was fired.
Yeah, hello.
Where have you been, Mr. D? I've been trying to reach you.
Oh, what's swimming, Sam? What's up?
Lieutenant Kyle's been trying to get in touch with you.
What about?
He wants you to come right over to 8274 Lexington, apartment 3D.
8274 Lexington.
He said to hurry.
You say what?
He's found Bobby Reed.
All right, Sam, I'll check you later.
Well, that was her first fantasy character. Let's come back to Danny Thomas. In 1960, Carl Reiner was looking for a female lead for his new show, The Dick Van Dyke Show, with Dick Van Dyke, who was coming off Bye Bye Birdie, and Danny Thomas mentioned him, some girl who had read for him a couple years before, who he thought was pretty good. Carl Reiner figured out who she was from the Richard Diamond series, and one of the many geniuses of Carl Reiner was to recognize that he had a budding star in a young Mary Tyler Moore. And she became a different kind of fantasy character. She reflected the early 60s as the sexy housewife, a good spouse, and a good mother, although it didn't reflect her real-life situation, which was something of the opposite at the time. But her relationship with Dick Van Dyke on one of the great TV sitcoms ever is legendary, ranks right up there with Lucy and Ricky.
And he was so good looking. There was just right away a sense of being very happy, very safe in the talent that he shared with me, and very comfortable in the humor that we shared, and an appreciation for each other's gifts. There were some O-Robs that were definitely written in, but I don't think any of us knew how they would grow, literally swell in different directions. That one would be a, "Oh, Rob." The next one would be, "Oh, Rob." The classic one, "Oh, Rob." And I don't even think we were aware of them until after the show was off the air, to tell you the truth.
You have to play what might be my most memorable Mary Tyler Moore moment, when she comes down a chute of walnuts in a dream sequence.
What are you doing home from work so early?
What? You gotta help me. I'm having a nightmare. I can't wake up.
You're having a nightmare?
Yeah.
Oh, how cute!
Well, you gotta help me get my thumb back. Hit me and wake me up.
Darling, I'll hit you with pleasure, but it won't get you back your thumb.
Well, come on, hit me before I grow another pair of eyes. What are you doing?
Getting a drink of fresh air.
You're a quite a wife.
Robert, do you know you have a stain on your tie?
You're a homemaker. How did you know?
I do wish you wouldn't point. It's so impolite.
Laura.
My name is not Laura. It's Lolac. Lolac of Twilo. I see you. I dreamt that Danny Thomas was chasing me and throwing walnuts at me, and every place he hit me, I'd lose a thumb and grow an eye. Oh, I wish it were morning. Do you wish it were morning?
Yeah.
I'm so scared.
Certainly a classic. Well, after that, Mary Tyler Moore may have been stereotyped for a couple of years, so she went into the movies. She did Thoroughly Modern Millie with Julie Andrews. She wasn't very good in that, but the movie I want to point out is called Change of Habit from 1969 with Elvis. It's not a great movie, but it's the first time Mary Tyler Moore is a feminist, and this is a year before Mary Richards. She's a nun, and it speaks to the growing wave of feminism that she was a part of rather than that she created. By the way, it's also the first time she worked with Ed Asner.
What you need is a change of habit. A change of habit.
Elvis Presley in a change-of-pace role of a doctor doing his best to keep the lid on a red-hot ghetto. Mary Tyler Moore, dedicated to her calling, but at heart a woman.
If we're going to reach these people, we've got to be accepted first as women, then as nuns. Please don't.
I get a feeling there's a message here. Like maybe there's somebody else.
You could say that, yes.
I just want to lay all my cards on the table. This place can slow you down, you know what I mean?
I wish there were an easy answer.
Let's try to find a way, Michelle.
Could he change her life? Could she forget her vows and follow her heart?
No, she couldn't. Like I say, not a great movie, but an indicator of the times. Okay, let's get to Mary Richards. She's married to Grant Tinker, whose podcast we've done. They were a Hollywood power couple and the great MTM Enterprises, where their top show is the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and she's a working career girl of the 70s, a journalist. It's another situation where she's sort of a fantasy character who reflects the times, and it's quite different from her real-life situation. But it is the one that inspired millions of women.
Mary made the decision!
Now wait a minute, Mur. It just so happens that that's my job, to make decisions. And I think I made a good decision. As a matter of fact, I think I made a darn good decision.
What are you doing?
I'm particularly proud of the show where Mary finds out that the man who had the job before her earned a good deal more money, and she takes Lou to task for this. And he listens to her and agrees with her and says that is terribly unfair, and you have every right to come to me and ask for an answer. And, she does her thing that she did. And he says, but listen, would it make any difference to you if I tell you that that man was married and had 3 children? And it made a difference to Mary. Sure, we'd like to see things perfect, and we'd like to see a level playing field. But there were extenuating circumstances, and I loved that about her. I loved that she didn't take the fight further.
Well, that was probably her zenith. Just like Lucy, she was stereotyped a little again, and she became a producer just like Lucy. She tried to do a variety show that was awful, but it featured a young Michael Keaton and a young David Letterman doing silly dancing with her, and then she had her big role in Ordinary People in 1980, which was filmed right around here. I didn't think she was great. She was playing a character a lot like herself in real life, but she did get an Academy Award nomination. And Robert Redford did make a very good movie.
Why did you tell Annie Marshall that Conrad is seeing a psychiatrist?
I don't know. Why not?
Well, for one thing, I don't think people hear that kind of thing very easily.
Come on.
The Ordinary People was such a change of pace that a woman could be so brittle inside that she could alienate her son. I saw her as a victim. I saw her as very reminiscent of my own life. And so I had to do that role. And I thank God for Robert Redford, who had the vision to believe that I could, in fact, pull it off. And I don't know how he knew that. But he said that when he first read the book, he had me in mind for it. And then after we had this first talk about it, he then went on to spend 3 months auditioning every actress in town. And he came back to me.
What in your own life struck a chord?
My expectation, my self-expectation, which is for perfectionist, unachievable dreams, thereby tending to expect that of other people around me. A lot of my father, a lot of determination not to be like my mother, but just an inability to be a whole person and give it freely. I won an Academy Award nomination, too. In fact, one day I ran into Jim Brooks on the street, and he came over and he said, "Mary," he did this, oh my God, he was so affected by the character that I had played in the movie after all the years we had been together on the show. It was disappointing to me, though, how many people would say of Beth Jarrett, boy, she was a bitch, because I don't see her as that. I see her as a victim. I see her as a woman who wanted to do the right thing and was taught how to do the right thing and never let it spontaneously erupt.
For some reason, she never got many movie roles after that. She did win 2 Tonys on Broadway for Whose Life Is It Anyway? And then she got into social causes like animal rights and juvenile diabetes, which she suffered from and gradually took away her eyesight. She certainly had her quirks and her idiosyncrasies, especially later in life, but you can't say she wasn't a generous person.
I would like to be remembered as somebody who made a difference in the lives of animals.
And in terms of television, movies, Broadway?
As somebody who always looked for the truth, even if it wasn't funny. I never dreamed as a kid, sitting in the Johnsons' living room, watching Milton Berle, that there would be an academy and that I would be inducted into its Hall of Fame wing. It's a nice feeling.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. Mary Tyler Moore was an incredible comedian, but like many comedians, and we've talked about this with Jonathan Winters and Robin Williams and many others, she was not a particularly happy person in real life. She once said, if I had it to do over, I wouldn't have pursued a career while I had a little boy to care for. Something to think about in that whole Mary Tyler Moore career thing everybody's pushing. But she had an incredible gift, and her contribution to television and to society is considerable. Of course, there's only one song we can close with, the song by the great Sonny Curtis, the friend of Buddy Holly. And he also wrote I Fought the Law, but this is his most famous song and his most famous performance. Before we play his version, I'm going to show you what a good song this is by playing another version I love by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. She was inspired by Mary Tyler Moore and did a great punk version.
How many times did you have to throw the tam in the opening credits?
I think, thankfully, just the once, because it really was a spur-of-the-moment idea. We were out there in the middle of February in Minneapolis, freezing, so cold that I couldn't speak, and I didn't have to. They just wanted shots of me in action. I was in front of a department store, and they said, "Oh, look, here, run out into that intersection. Take your hat," which I had in my hand, "and throw it up in the air, as though this is the happiest moment of your life." And I did, and that was it.
You can turn the world on with a smile. You can take a nothing day and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile. Well, it's you, girl, and you should know. With each glass and every little movement you show,